Hey everyone, my name is Lori Forrester. I work for the Cherokee County Water and Sewage Authority, and today we're here to learn about point and non-point source pollution with the activity we call Build a River. Build a River is something we do in the classroom. It's a great hands-on activity, but due to the current situation and not being able to be in the classroom, we wanted to be here to teach you about point and non-point source through this format. So today we have our river. We're going to say this is the Etowah River. Etowah River is a very important river in our county that provides fresh, clean drinking water to our drinking water plant. And it's important for us to keep it safe and clean. And so let's talk about the aspects of a healthy river. So the first aspects of a healthy river that everyone notices once you get near it is the vegetation. So this is our buffer zone. Trees are very, very important part of a healthy river. The reason that they're very important is because what they do is they provide a way of filtering water before it gets to the river. So their roots suck up the nutrients that are in there, and it slows the water down before it gets to the river. So vegetation is the first thing that you'll find in a healthy river. The next thing you find in a healthy river is rocks. Lots and lots of rocks. So the bottom of the river is covered in rocks. So we're going to put the rocks down in our river. And you'll find the rocks in headwaters and closer down to where it deposits into other rivers and into the lake. Now the importance of the rocks is certain things depend on these rocks to live for living spaces, which we're going to talk about in just 1 second. So now we have our beautiful river with our vegetation and our rocks around it. And what lives in those rocks is our macroinvertebrates. Our macroinvertebrates are living things that have a backbone we can see with our naked eye that live within the river, such as crayfish. We have our crayfish, which we're going to be putting into our river. They're very happy. And I have a list of the macros that you'd find in our creek right behind me on this chart as well. So you can it's kind of be hard to see our stoneflies, our mayflies, our caddisflies here, but if you go to a Georgia Adopt-A-Stream, you can see up close pictures of our macros that are on this chart. We have important things such as scuds, and scuds are tiny. They're even if we can zoom in really close, scuds are tiny little creatures, but they're very important to one organism that we're going to talk about next, which is our fish. Our fish eat these macroinvertebrates. So things like our speckled mad tom, which live in our creek. So I'm going to be putting those down. Our snail bullhead, which live in our creek. Our spotted bass. And some of these live in the bigger sections, and some of these live in the smaller sections. It just depends on which one we're talking about. We have our bluefin stone roller, which is a little fish, and our black-tailed red horse. And so there's so many fish that live and within our watershed. All these fish that I'm talking about are fish that we found within our watershed when we did our fish studies. And so it's really, really interesting. We have the red-breasted sunfish, which is a really pretty fish. So we're going to put those down in our creek. So we have a pretty healthy creek right now. We have our flowing water, we have our vegetation, we have our macroinvertebrates, we have our fish, And then we can add creatures like that live in and around the creek. We have our frogs that live in our creek. So once you have a healthy creek, you attract the frogs, the salamanders. You'll find those in the creek. So I would like to live around a healthy creek like this, but this is not necessarily the way it stays. What happens is people find places that are beautiful, and I'm sure at one point in time somebody found Bedawal River and was like, wow, that's really pretty, I would like to live there. So then we started having communities. So we're going to put houses next to our creek. So I'm going to move this out of our way just so you guys can see better. So we're going to put our houses on that side. So we start with small little farmhouses. They build their farms. And so along the side of the river, the reason they do that is because it's easy for their cows to get water and whatnot. They can pull water out of the river to put in their troughs and that type of thing. In order to build more houses, there has to be some construction. So now we have our bulldozers and our construction trucks, and what that brings is new homes. But it also brings dirt. So we're going to add dirt to our river. So now it doesn't look so pretty, but in addition to what's going on now, we now have some bigger buildings, added a school. Since now there's people living in neighborhoods, now we have a school. So where there was the vegetation that I removed, we now have farms, neighborhoods, homes, businesses. And then our newest addition would be a factory. So now we have a factory. I'm going to put the factory more up on that end. Now, what all of these things, what things I've discussed here, the dirt, those things are non-point source pollution. What the factory is, regardless of if it's harmful or not, factories are considered point source pollution. So what they do is they have a pipe from their factory that discharges back into the river. So they're a point source. Not all point sources are harmful to the river. Our wastewater treatment plant is considered a point source, but our water is treated to a high level before it's put back into the river. So there are cases where point source is a problem in our watershed, but 95% of the problems within our watershed is our non-point source. So we're going to talk about what a few more of those non-point source pollutants are. So if you have homes and farms, you have people putting fertilizer on their yard. And there's nothing wrong with fertilizer. Fertilizer is one of those things that it isn't necessary. However, it depends on what type of fertilizer you use, when you apply it, how much you apply. So as long as you follow directions on the fertilizer, don't put fertilizer out right before it rains, you're good. Then we have herbicides. So this is the stuff that gets rid of any kind of unwanted plants, things they call weeds, dandelions, whatnot. So that is what the herbicide is. And that's another one of those things where as long as you use it following directions, not too much at the right time, it's not a big deal. And our last chemical that we use around our homes, schools, businesses, the farm, is pesticides. So getting rid of those pesky fire ants that are in your yard. And pesticides, once again, is like the fertilizer and the herbicides. What it does is, depending on how much you use, where you use it. In bigger cities, you may need pesticides to get rid of small mice, rats, whatnot. And so pesticides could cause a problem negatively if you poison a rat and a hawk eats it and its carcass ends up in the Etowah River or near the Etowah River, it could be a problem. So that's kind of the things we think about. It's not just about the pesticide itself, but if the rat's killed and then the hawk sees an opportunity to eat the rat, then the hawk could be poisoned as well. So now we have all that going on, and then often when you have people, you have litter. So balloons is a big thing. The reason balloons end up as pollution so much is because people find it fascinating to let balloons go up in the air. So if they go up, you can imagine they come down. And they can come down anywhere, and oftentimes they end up in our river. So if at any point in time you think it'd be fun to let balloons go, know that you're polluting somewhere. Balloons that end up in the forest, end up in the river, in the craziest places where they shouldn't end up. And then you have when people are fishing, they use nets oftentimes, or they have traps and sometimes those get away from them, or they set them and then they don't come back to check them, or they get caught and then they just leave them behind. So you have nets, which is a huge issue. Cans often are found in and around the river. Water bottles is a huge thing. If you go to any cleanup, you find hundreds of water bottles. It's typically the number one thing people find in the Etowah River is water bottles. And then we have plastic bags, newspaper, magazines, all kinds of things that end up in the river. And that's not even talking about the bigger stuff that you find in and around the river, like microwaves, refrigerators, mattresses, things like that. So it's not looking so great, but one of our newest things that we're finding as pollution is because of the pandemic is gloves and masks. So people will put on gloves to go into the grocery store. They'll finish with their grocery shopping. They'll take off their gloves and they'll throw them on the ground. And so that's very irresponsible. These gloves end up in storm drains. Storm drains lead to rivers. So now, not only do we have the problem of all the trash that's already in there, but now we have possibly contaminated gloves, plastic gloves that end up in a river. And the same with disposable masks. They wear that mask, a disposable mask, and then that ends up left on the ground with the gloves. And so that's going to become a new problem with pollution. So please, if you know somebody, if you've seen somebody do this, you can tell them that it's not right and it's wrong. And what happens is it ends up in our rivers. So we started off with a beautiful river, and now we have a not so beautiful river. And as you can imagine, the more of this non-point source pollution, the less of this that we have. So if you don't, this pollution is affecting the fish. When the dirt covers the rocks, then the macroinvertebrates don't have anywhere to live. If the macroinvertebrates aren't there, we take those away, then the fish don't have anything to eat. So the effect of the pollution is taking all this great stuff that we have, the frogs, the fish, the macros, and it diminishes the quality and what we have in our river. And we want to keep this as clean as possible. Now, right now, we see it right here. But the thing is, what happens is this doesn't stay here. All this pollution, we start up there, goes here, is ending up in the lake. So eventually, all of this pollution is going to move downstream. And our collection point is Lake Allatoona. So now Lake Allatoona is full of the trash from the Etowah River. Herbicides, pesticides, everything moves down to the lake, which makes everything up here look better, but there's always more to come. So this is not what we want to do to our lake. Anything that doesn't get picked up in the lake moves down further and further till we get eventually to the ocean. So we want to keep the Etowah River clean. We want to keep vegetation. We want to keep our beautiful fish. We want to keep our macroinvertebrates. We want to keep our amphibians in the creek and keep it nice and healthy for the future generation. So we hope to see you in the future, see you in the classroom as this, using this as a hands-on demonstration about point and non-point source pollution. If you guys have any questions, we're always available to answer questions. Have a great day.